Louise here. I'm so excited to see you on Talking Trading again. We love our podcast, and some of the exciting things that I get to do as a podcast host is to introduce some traders to our trading community and to interview them to find out not only the similarities but also the differences between the ways that we approach the market. Now, just before we kick off with my interview with Mark Stowers, I think I wanted to tell you about a little bit of feedback that I had during the week. Now, I've been going on a lot of different podcasts. I have been going on some ones that aren't just trading related. And I received a very angry email from a very angry man telling me that how dare I go on a different business podcast, that I'm going to quote this, that you should stay in your lane and do not rise above your station. My goodness me. So I'll be curious to hear Mark's views on this as well. But let me just tell you that having had not only 30 plus years in the markets, prior to that, I was a national manager. So I think I do have the ability to be able to speak about corporate issues. And also, for goodness sake, I'm in my mid 50s now. So I can use my voice and I can speak about other topics, not just about trading. So, dear angry man, I do hope you're listening, and I hope that this has appealed to you on many different levels, because I will not be just staying in my lane. I will choose to interview people like Mark about trading. I will talk about the differences and the similarities, and I'll find other ways to vent, not just on my own podcast, but also on other people's podcasts. Whew, okay, I'm glad I got that off my chest. That may be an article in the future.
Well,
Now,
Louise,
Mark,
I have 500,000 downloads and I have 5 people that don't like my podcast. I don't care.
that's it, isn't it? Exactly. I think that's what we have to do as well. And as traders, we have such thick skins. It's a good thing. Oh, so let me introduce Mark. Mark, you have interviewed me on your podcast, safedaypodcast.com, and I got to know you a lot better. Now, the thing that I really love is talking about some of the things that make you tick. And I wanted you to bring some of these issues out to our traders, because sometimes people aren't trading a medium term time frame like me and like my business partner Chris Tate. Some people are using the markets for cash flow and an immediate kick, and this is where you excel. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you
Could
for
you
having me.
Oh, it's exciting. I've been looking forward to this. I would love you to tell our listeners a little bit more about your background and perhaps kick off that way so that we can get a bit of perspective.
Okay. Um, when I got out of college, and I have 3 different bachelor's degrees: sociology, history, and accounting. Accounting paid for my lifestyle. So I spent another 25 years after college being a corporate accountant. My specialty was cost accounting and manufacturing systems. And then I realized I didn't like it. It only took me 25 years to figure it out. And then so I went into some consulting, and from consulting, I was teaching people how to start their own business. And I sat down with myself and had a heart to heart a little while after that. Said, I'm teaching people how to start their business, but I've never done that. So I started my own business about 17 years ago. It was a home care business in which we take care of the elderly and the infirm in their houses. And I ended up with, 150 employees and almost 500 customers. And it was great to start with. I was successful. I made it 14 years without going into bankruptcy. But at the end of the 14 years, I called my partner and I says, I want out. I don't care what you pay me, as long as I make my money back, my initial investment, I want out. And so 4 years ago, I left that. In the meantime, I started looking at different opportunities to try and figure out cash flow. because I'm right now, I'm 68 and I was 60 at the time. And I met a couple of guys, my partners in safe day trading. We were around 2011. Between the three of us, I think we spent 150,000, maybe $200,000 in training, just training. And, but we didn't have anybody that would give us the secret sauce. We almost had the answer, but we didn't. And so we put our heads together over the next year or two, and we figured out a methodology that works for us and able to define direction of a trade. Now, I trade commodities, gold, oil, natural gas, and the Dow. And then I also trade options. And when I trade options, I do a simple buy. I either buy a call or I buy a put. Now, my trades don't last more than 20 minutes.
Ooh.
And in some cases, they don't last more than 5 seconds. So
Wow. So, look, there's some interesting aspects to this. So, one of the things that you've mentioned is that with the partners that you have in your firm, how do you split that up? How do you know what each person should trade? Because I have a lot of people who have like the partnership at home, the husband and wife trading, and some of the traders have decided that the husband should trade this and the wife should trade that. I'd be curious to know from a corporate perspective, how have you split that up?
we trade the same things. Okay. I sit in my house and I trade, and my partner sits in his house and my other partner in his house. And what we do is we have a 1 hour trading class in which we just talk about the trades between the three of us. We have our students sit in and listen to us. They have their own charts up and all this stuff, but my partner may say, hey, it looks like there's a safe day dot showing up, and it looks like it's certified on oil, getting in at 119.25. So I may get in at 119.25. My other partner may not get in at all.
Yeah.
And so we trade.
Yeah,
Now,
so the communication being so important that you're making a regular time to be able to discuss what is going on. And even if you are at home looking to implement, the first piece of advice from Mark would be to talk about where you're at. If both of you are trading, discuss where you're at. I always suggest with a husband and wife situation that you suggest to each other, look, I don't want to talk about the positions that I have in the market because that can wreck my own psychology. But if I ever draw down 25% of our money, then I will close the positions that I have open to me that are at stop. I will consult a higher authority and I won't enter new positions. And that way there's like a stop loss for the two. How do you risk control between the three of you? Or are you only trading your own money?
I'm trading my own money.
Ah, very
It,
pure. That's really good
and
to
so
see.
what I do is I was an accountant. Okay. I'm very conservative. So, and I believe a lot in money management. So when I talk to people, I always talk about one contract. Okay. So if I'm trading oil, I'm trading, when I talk to people, I made $100. Well, that's one contract. I may have had 5 or 10 contracts in my hands, but I'm only going to tell people that it's one, because there's so many people out there that think they're going to be a zillionaire
That's it.
within the first 6 months of trading. And so we show people how to be profitable every day so that you can work a couple of hours a day trading and then go do the rest of it. I mean, I've been on the vacation in Costa Rica, India, on cruise ships, and I'll trade maybe an hour or so in the mornings, and I may pay for my trip.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day I'm out doing stuff with the family.
How do you switch off though? Because from a burnout perspective, when I've had periods of short-term trading, it has taken a physical toll on me. I'm curious about that.
Well, one of the things that I found was the Wim Hof breathing system. And what happens is, let me explain about my mornings. We trade at 8 o'clock, or we trade at 7 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. The market kind of opens up at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So what happens is I get up at 5:30. I'm up at 5:30. I do my personal things. I come into the office, light up my 6 screens of charts, and I'll get them all set up within 10 or 15 minutes. I drink at least one of these.
Look, I've got one that's a similar thing, warm water.
Yep. But I have at least 32 ounces of water in my first couple of first half hour of life in the mornings, because I've been sleeping all night. Dehydration is part of it. I found too that my mental focus is really on dehydration and how I sleep. Now, if I have a lousy night's sleep, if I'm dehydrated, I don't feel very good, then I may just do paper trading that day.
Wow, so you judge it based on your physicality and how you're feeling at the time. You are
Yeah, I mean,
prepared to back away.
yeah, I'm prepared to step away from it and say, hey, I can't do it. And if I have the choice, I wouldn't trade at all for that day. Or I may come back later on in the day. So anyway,
I think
go
that's
back.
good. I'll just touch on that as well because we've got a wonderful client in South Australia. He calls it his content scale, where it's like a seesaw. So one end is like really euphoric, and the other end is sad and horrible. So that level, that middle ground, is where he's looking to achieve to be able to put on a position. So the methods that you're talking about, looking at your morning routine and about the breathing that you're going to tell us about in just a moment, that can get you back to that middle equilibrium to be content so that you can be focused. I love it.
Stress-free.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that you have to realize as a trader is you're going to lose money. Okay. It's given. Now, how much money you lose, that's really up to you. I've seen people lose $30,000 in half an hour. Okay. So what I have is I have a stop loss and a profit stop. Now my stop loss is only $50. So if it goes against me $50, I made the wrong choice and it bounces me out. Then if I make a profit on it and it gets to $100, I made $100. Now remember, I'm always going to talk about one contract. Okay. I may have multiple contracts going. And if I have multiple contracts going, then my stop loss is inapplicable, or my profit stop is inapplicable because I'll have multiple stop loss or profit stops. So I'm trading to make money, trading to make a lifestyle that, I'm comfortable with. My whole thing when I quit the job was to pay off all my debts, pay my house off, pay the cars off, pay my kids' schools off, all of that stuff. And I've been successful in doing all of that. And now we've been putting money away. Okay. And it gets to the point too, when you're trading, like I trade, day trading, that you can only use about $50,000 or $60,000. You can only have enough money for a number of contracts, because everything is different. This last 2 weeks, the contracts have been really slow because we had a holiday on Monday. And so the contracts have been low and the volatility has been slow. So I dropped my profit stop. I also dropped my number of contracts. But when it's crazy, you open up the spigot, and you could have 10 contracts going on, because if you call it right, you're in the profit pretty much right away if you've called the direction. So all you then do is move my stop loss into profit and let it run, depending upon how many contracts I have.
So look at the similarities of what we're talking about as well. So Chris Tate and I are very stop oriented. We don't put a position into the markets unless we can put a stop on. That is
Right.
a risk control management situation. But we're also knowing when to be more flexible, because certainly you have to take into account, for us, the volatility of the stock. We use ATR, average true range, and Mark, you may use a different method, but regardless, have a look how you can apply these core principles to your own trading as a listener.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is money management for a trader. If you can manage your money, okay. Now, granted, until I learned how to money manage my money, which was probably 2015, 2016, I burned through maybe 3 accounts.
Whew, that's tough on the psyche, hey?
Yeah, it was pretty demoralizing. And after the third one, I was, but we had by that time we had developed a system that was starting to really work, and we had really started to hone it. So since then, I have never burned through an account yet.
Yeah, and
Uh,
the thing that I love as well is that you invested in your own trading education. So few people do that. So many people just say, hey, let's put it all on black, woohoo.
no,
And
no, what?
it doesn't work. You have to be methodical and structured and disciplined and have a predetermined method of entry, exit, and position sizing. And the people that have that, regardless of the methods that they implement, the specific strategies, they're the ones who come out on top.
Yeah, and I'll tell you too. I mean, going back to my
Yeah,
morning job or my morning
routine.
after I've lit up everything and I've got everything kind of running, what I then do is I spend about an hour surfing the news.
Ah,
So I'm looking at CNBC, Bloomberg. I also have a couple of sites. One's called investing.com, and it's a economic calendar. We found that every half hour from 6 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time, some market is closing or opening around the world. And because of that, there could be changes in directions or reversals. Today at 7:30 my time, we had unemployment reports and employment reports. And so, do you want to trade that? If you're thinking it's bad, are you going to go short, let gold drop or the Dow drop, or are you going to just step away and give it a couple of minutes to settle down and then go back into trading? We found that was so important for managing our loss.
yeah,
Just be
yeah. So I tend not to listen to or watch the news. I find that because I have got a more medium term view as well, that a lot of the aspects around the fundamentals are already factored into the price, and I get distracted. I get distracted. I get also a bit sad if I watch too much news, frankly. So I try to put blinkers on and limit my exposure to outside influences, particularly when I'm in a trade, because all of a sudden all logic flies out the window. You're
oh
nursing your
I
little baby, come on,
yeah, yeah.
baby. I have actually even barracked for them where a little cheerleading thing going on.
No, no.
Which they can't hear me, how dare they?
Yeah, yeah. Well, what happens for me is that I look at what I'm looking for is big picture stuff. One
Yeah.
of my degrees in college was in history, Eastern European intellectual studies. So I have this ability to kind of look and analyze and try to read between the lines, because I learned how to read Russian papers during the 1960s or the 70s and 80s, when they were lying their teeth off, just like they are now,
Ah.
to understand what actually happened.
God, that's
Uh,
very dedicated. That is so
yeah,
impressive. It's like Chris Hadfield, the Canadian who wanted to become an astronaut. And when he did become an astronaut, he realized that he really needed to learn Russian because that was the direction everything was going in.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
really served him very well. So you've got a similar thing from a trading background to be able to have that analysis, but also the fact that you're willing to go that extra mile. I'm incredibly impressed.
So what I do is, I look at the big picture. Okay, what is Elon Musk saying today? Okay, the left wing is going to be upset. The right wing is going to be upset. But what is it going to do to Tesla prices? Okay, then I go in and I look at the daily charts now for the commodities and for the stocks that I have picked in terms of what stocks I'm going to look at for that day in terms of possible trading. I'll look at what the forecast is on a daily basis, and then maybe even the three or the weekly basis as well. So I'm going back in and looking at those charts. So by the time I get to about half an hour before trading starts, then I reach my point of breathing techniques. And what I do is I use Wim Hof, and he's in YouTube. He's great. Um, I don't do the cold shower thing that he does.
Oh my gosh, that whole diving into frozen lakes. I have to say
Yeah,
that Wim Hof method, since you first mentioned this to me, I'm so glad you did. I have gone down this deep rabbit hole looking at Wim Hof and finding out more about this technique and the person. Maybe you could give us a little bit of background about it and perhaps an overview about how the breathing technique works.
well, the breathing technique is he has three sessions in which you take deep breaths. So what you're doing, I was a swimmer in college, and one of the things that we did was we took a lot of deep breaths when we got ready to swim, so that our blood oxygen level was higher. What happens for me is that it releases a lot of stress. Now, it also requires you to hold your breath. Okay. So when I first started Wim Hof about a year ago, I couldn't hold my breath for 10 seconds. Now I'm up to about 40 seconds of holding my breath, but you only have to do it 3 times. Um, but really the key is that getting that blood into the circulation, and it really releases it because you can't think about anything else but breathing. You don't have to worry about, well, is the Dow going up, the Dow going down, what's going on. I'm just breathing, just to breathe. And so for me, that's very, very helpful. And I also, as a matter of fact, I've started using it at night when I wake up and I'm having trouble sleeping. I'll put Wim Hof on, and after I close it down, I'm out.
That's fantastic. What a great method. So, if you are curious about it, just investigate it. It's Wim, WIMHOFF. So, the
Right.
surname's Hoff. So, investigate that. Go for a little bit of a deep dive like I did, and I'm sure you'll find some amazing aspects to that. Personally, I couldn't stand a cold shower either. So, I think I will take all of that under advisement. We don't have any frozen lakes, so luckily I am going to be spared jumping into a frozen lake, but I do like the principle behind it. And I do think we need, as traders, a way of relieving stress in our bodies, because once our body is stressed, our mind shuts down and we can't think with that clarity and focus that we need. So a lot of the methods that you need to implement as a trader, whether they're yoga techniques, whether it's a tapping type of technique, which I'm sure Mark can talk about as well, whether it's Wim Hof breathing, I use the Calm app. All of these ideas are designed just to be able to get us to the point where we can think clearly and execute our trading plan with precision. Now, tell me a bit more about tapping, because I know that's an area that you like to explore as well, Mark.
Sure. Well, I have a habit of running down a lot of rabbit holes. But what I was really looking for was techniques that would give me a leg up on trading. Okay. And Wim Hof was one of them. The other one is a guy by the name of David Childerley. Childerley. And what he does is he does EMT tapping, and that is emotional freedom track tapping. So what he does is he has a series of affirmations, and as you go through and start the tapping process, what you do is you hit key points in your body. Um, kind of like the putting the pins and the needles into your things, but these are generally covering around the face. So you have above the eyebrow, below the eye, underneath the nose, underneath the chin, above on the top of the head, and different places. And as you go through these affirmations, you do this tapping. So you go through 2 affirmations, and as you do that, you're tapping a different area. So it does 2 things for me. It gets me, again, focused on, myself. And then it also provides me an affirmation process to support my thoughts about trading. Now, this guy does a particular tapping thing just for traders. So that's very helpful. And so again, I tried affirmations, but I just couldn't I had the right affirmations, but I just couldn't get the right ritual or the right routine to
Yeah, you
do
can
it.
get it to cement. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so what I've done is this tapping kind of, like I said, I've got, 10 minutes of breathing, 10 minutes of tapping, and then then I fall right into start trading. Uh, and one of the things too that and I learned this from an older trader, he says, if you have 2 or 3, first of all, in my money management, if I lose more than $150 in 3 trades, I stopped trading.
Isn't that
Okay.
good? Because it means that you're probably either out of sync with the market or perhaps the market has changed in some way so that you have your own personal limit regarding when to stop. And I think that's really important. So for my traders, we use a method called portfolio heat. So if you have 1% risk, for example, that you're using to position size, then you don't go over 5% to initial stop in terms of the number of initial trades that you open. Now, if all of this is blowing your mind and you're a new listener to Talking Trading, everybody just take a deep breath because we've both said a hell of a lot of jargon. Just realize that the longer you hang out with us, the easier this will become, and you will get really immersed into this world and you'll understand the jargon and impress your friends at dinner parties too. So that method
I
of
Yeah,
being able to control your risk in some way when you're out of sync with the market is something I think that everybody listening needs to take away from this interview.
yeah. It's so hard. One of the things that an old trader told me a long time ago was, "There's always another trade."
Yes.
Okay, so there's always another trade. There's another $100 or $5,000 or something out there ready to go. It's just a matter of you being on time, identifying it correctly, um, and trade.
I love it.
Now, yeah, and he also said, unfortunately, it'll take you about 1 million trades to be good.
Phew. I'm not sure if I
So,
agree with that, to be open with you.
well,
I do wonder about that. I think that there's a lot of education that can overcome that level of learning on the job. And if you can use some paper trading in there, if you can get somebody to mentor you, if you can listen to the right people, you can shortcut your learning curve. But I don't mind the idea of having the concept that this may be harder than you think in the back of your mind. That I think is a
what?
healthier way to approach it rather than how hard can this be?
Yeah. Well, the key thing here is to understand the marketplaces.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for a year or two when I first started out, I actually just paper traded. Okay. I got to know gold. I got to know oil, natural gas, and the Dow. And things have changed, granted. There's a disconnect right now between the Dow and gold. but oil is, I see today, this evening, it hit $120 a barrel. So, there are things you just got to be aware of. But it's really, in terms of studying it, it's the techniques of the candlesticks.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh, you're speaking my language.
So, I mean, you got to know a couple of things. You got to know. You got to know Fibonacci. Okay. 3, 5, 8, candlesticks. The different size moves that happen with Fibonacci. You have to know what a candlestick, what a shooting star versus a hammer is, and what it means. There are techniques that you've really got to kind of follow up with in terms of being able to identify, because the whole key here is to be able to identify direction of the trade,
That's it.
period.
And no matter how you do it, if you've got a duplicatable system that you can use again and again, that is exactly what everybody is aiming for. So the specifics of your method may differ, but the principles, the concepts behind what we're trying to do, it's exactly the same. And I love these interviews because that's often the point that I get to. Personally, I couldn't day trade. I choose not to because I find those number of decisions, the decision fatigue, can wear me out. I option traded for about 3-4 years exclusively with just the option market at one stage, and that was short-term trading, but it took a toll, and for me it wasn't the right move for my life. I also found that over the longer term I've made more money out of following the medium-term trend than I have out of the short term. However, this is horses for courses. Mark, you've got the internal fortitude to be able to say, I can make that many decisions. I have got a method, and I've got methods of recovery as well, which is a real key. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know one of the pieces of research that's come out of the States, actually. I'm hoping they're going to do a continuation of this. What they did is they looked at 12, they were all males, okay, so 12 guys, the top traders, and they had a look at their testosterone levels because they thought maybe these alpha males, beat the chest in a gorilla like way, plunge into the market and make a lot of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the higher testosterone level blokes that were making the money. They looked at their serotonin levels. They looked at their recovery levels after an adrenaline dump. And they tried to work out, were they different? Now, what they found was that their levels of testosterone and adrenaline, they were all the same as all the other mere mortals, but their secret sauce was their ability to recover after an adrenaline dump. Now, I find this interesting, and I'm a big napper. If I have my way, I will sleep in the middle of the day, actually around about 3. I find for me, it works like a charm. Even a 20-minute nap with a meditation app running in the background, sometimes up to an hour. And I've heard that it can actually increase productivity up to 34%. Now, Mark, when we first started chatting, I know you kind of made a joke about napping, but I want to talk about that now because that is a recovery process. Tell me, do you think I'm a wuss for taking a nap where I can? Or are you going to say, hey, that doesn't sound like a bad idea?
Well, I tell my kids when they were young that they hated taking naps. Okay. But that after they got in college, they thought it was the greatest thing in the world. So let me continue on a little bit with my routine. So I trade from like 7 o'clock until 8:30. So about an hour and a half. And I take a break. It's till 8 o'clock. Then I take about a half-hour break, you know, get up, stand up, walk around. And then I come back and I know I do some more trading from 8:30 when the market actually opens up till maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, I'm done. Okay. I make sure I don't have an adrenaline dump. I find that if I do an adrenaline jump, I either get too cocky or I'd start revenge trading. Okay. So I'm trying to stay away from that. So if I realize that my serotonin levels are starting to climb, I'm kind of pulling back on that because I've seen revenge trading
It's not
you know,
pretty. Mm.
oh, it could get really ugly really fast. Because you start talking about doubling up contracts to make the money back, blah, blah, blah. So at 10 o'clock, I'm done. I have a little light snack, and then I go sit in my chair or lay on my bed, and I get up around, my wife is disabled. So she'll come in around noon saying, hey, I'm hungry, when I have to prepare a meal. So at that point, I get up from my nap and do my thing, and then I come back here, and then I run the business for the next couple of hours. But I not taking a nap, it gets hard when
Yeah.
you get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 20 minutes is great. 2 hours is wonderful.
And I like that it's kind of rolled into a part of your routine. I think a lot of trading comes down to the routines that we implement and the habits that we can form that we can easily automatically create and react to, so we don't have to think too hard. A lot
Right.
of the difficulties are when you're having to make decisions on the fly. So it's far better to structure your day around a method that will suit you physiologically as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and it's true for me in my meals. I have the same meals for lunch and breakfast that I have every day. I wear the same clothes. I don't do a lot of getting out in the streets much. So, a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, they're all either black or gray, and kind of like the Mark Zuckerberg plan of clothing, because you don't need all that stuff.
You don't, and
And
it minimizes that extra decision that you have to make. I think it's
right,
a really wise way to go. The traders that I interview that have done the best in the markets are the ones who have built in these structures around their day and around their week and around their month and around their quarter. They rely on things like Google Calendar to tell them, okay, now this is where we're up to in the month. This is what you have to do. So you don't have to think consciously about it. You've just got that unconscious onto the next step phase in
right.
your life. Yeah.
Now, there are some times when the US Fed comes out with their announcements on interest rates, that I'll trade in the afternoon. Uh, and, in that process of trading that, I don't trade the initial announcement. I wait 1 minute for the next candlestick to show up, and that's where I start trading, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Goofy things like that happen. Like today, unemployment numbers were supposed to be bad, but gold and Dow took off and went up. So, I stepped away, let it settle down a little bit, and then came back and traded.
The ability to
Uh,
build in that pause, I think, is very important. Just to have, if you don't understand what's going on, to have a little way to circumvent all of those emotions, take that little circuit breaker, and then move on. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and just
good.
come back to it and deal with it.
Yeah.
We also trade the oil and gas reports. Wednesday is the oil report for the US, and Thursday is the gas report. So again, I don't trade the first candle, because I've seen people lose thousands of dollars because it went down and then it went up and they didn't put on the right stop. Uh, so I'm just trading. One of the things I find that if you look at a trade in which there's a large movement, that it eventually comes back to where it initially started.
Yes.
Okay. So I play that,
Yeah.
whether it's going down and then comes back up. I'll trade it trading it back up. So I'm not looking for the home run. I'm looking for singles. I tell our students, you know, you win more baseball games hitting singles than you do home runs.
Love it. And Mark, if you could give some advice and encouragement to our traders, what would you say to somebody who was struggling at the moment with the markets?
Well, the markets have been difficult, even for good traders for the last couple of weeks, at least in the US. So one of the things I do when the markets are difficult is I reduce my profit stop expectations. So instead of $100 or $200, I drop it down to $50 or $60. Okay, so all I'm looking for is a quick move and I'm out. The other thing that I look for too is, I get more particular about my trading. Uh,
Yes.
because there are two things one of the things I'm just terrible at, and that's narrow range trading. Okay. When it's trading, $100 or $200 ranges and then goes up all the way up, and then all the way back down, I find that I lose money more than likely. So the faster I can identify a range, the faster I get out of it and just let it go.
Yeah, because the
Oh,
trend is our friend. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But the real technique here is you've got to be able to identify those.
Yes, you
Okay.
do. You really do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mark,
And
I'd like our people to get in touch with you. Perhaps you could give us a little bit more information about your podcast and how people can access that.
sure. Again, I do a podcast. I do typically an interview that I release on Sundays, like I did with you, Louise. Then I also on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do kind of a technical update. So I'll recap the market, identify things that I think are important, and then talk possibly about trading things like understanding what to do with a simple moving average 8. Or something like that, some small technical thing that people need to understand. So I'm on 40 different podcasters under Safe Day Trading. I'm in YouTube. We have a site called Jack Trademan, in which we have all kinds of videos on. We have, if you go to safedaypodcast.com, you can get all kinds of free information and even come to one of our live trading sessions for free and just got a chance to taste what we do. Or if you really need to talk to me, my email is simple. It's mark@safedaytrading.org.
Fantastic. Mark, I've loved chatting with you. I'm sure there are many, many more things we could talk about, but we are out of time. So go and visit Mark at safedaypodcast.com. And I just know, even though Mark and I approach the markets differently, that you will find some gems in what Mark has to offer. So well done on all of your success, Mark. I know that we'll stay in close contact.
Louise, thank you very much for your time and letting me on.